We are pleased to be joined here in the studio out here at Cardinals headquarters by Cardinals special teams coordinator Jeff Rodgers. Jeff, thanks for the time. What's going on?
Yeah, not a lot. We're in the middle of this at the end of OTAs and kind of working through all our units. And this week has been more of a focus on the kickoff aspect of the new rule. Last week was more kickoff return, so kind of working through all those things and trying to get as many looks as we can.
Just on the new kickoff, you mentioned it right there, and we were talking about it, of course, in the not-so-beautiful part of the program, but I got to ask you right now, do you like this, Jeff? Do you like the way that it's going, the new kickoff rule, and why?
Yeah, so I would first say that I've been in this league for 20 years now, and I have seen the evolution of this play from a four-man wedge to a two-man wedge to having requirement from people being in certain places of the field. So I've always liked the way that kickoff return started, but I understand why it's gone where it's been. There was a lot of things that were talked about to make the play safer for the players, to bring more excitement in the game for the fans. There was 1 out of every 5 kickoffs last year was return. 4 out of 5 were touchbacks. They wanted more action. This play is going to give us more action. So in my estimation, I think that the return rate will triple. The field position will go up. That's going to lead to more points. Everybody but defensive people like those things: points, field position, excitement in the game. So I like where it's going. I think after a year, I think it's going to change a little bit before we get to opening day. I think there will be some things come up and get more clarity, but I also think that after a year of doing this, there's probably some other adjustments coming.
Wow. So what do you think it could be changed still right now?
Well,
are you comfortable saying that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a framework for the play.
Okay.
I think that there's going to be some blocks, tackles, angles, things like that will show up on tape that maybe isn't what they had in mind for some plays. And I think we'll get more clarity on that block we like, and we're good with that.
Okay.
And this block may not be something we want going forward.
So it sounds like you think the kickoff is still going to be kind of a work in progress.
I very much think that. Yeah, I think that, again, the framework of the play, I think most of it will be the way they're talking about right now, but I also think that as time goes on, they've kind of reserved the right to say, hey, throughout the preseason, we're going to continue to evaluate. What you see by and large is absolutely what it's going to be on opening day.
Right.
But there's be some finer parts of the rules, potentially rule enforcement, things like that may get tweaked. That won't have a major impact, but will be different.
Jeff Rodgers is joining us. Jeff, obviously NFL teams like to be prepared for everything. Coaches, I'm sure yourself, like to be prepared for everything. This is something that's going to impact everybody, though. How much of it is going to kind of be learning on the fly across the league, just in terms of how much it's going to impact games?
Sure. So really, there's 3 training or 3 experimental type of timelines. There's what has happened right now. There's the things that I've had in my head for a couple of months that are being brought to life on the practice field. And I think there's some things that I've learned by watching both sides of it, the kickoff and the kickoff return, that have provided me more clarity on how I want to coach it and teach it, as well as these schemes work against these kicks better. And if they did something else, these types of returns would be better. I think once you get into the preseason, you got 32 different teams, all with different ideas. And we're all going to be watching each other. And the things that are having the most success, other teams are going to pick up on that. They're going to implement those things, and vice versa. Like if you're struggling in a certain area, it's probably going out the window. All that being said, when you get to opening day, the real bag of tricks are open, right? Yeah. So those first 4 or 5 weeks, I think, will be another adjustment period where you're going to be trying to do things that you may have seen, or if you got it figured out, and God bless us if we do. I don't think anybody does right now, but if you have it figured out now, you're probably going to continue doing that. But this league is so good at figuring out what you're trying to do and making you adjust at some point. And that happens every year regardless of the rule change, but that's kind of how I see it. Right now versus preseason when you get other people's ideas versus here's what it is and the best players are out there.
This is experimental, isn't it? I mean, it feels like a lab type situation right now. You and I were talking about this as well before we went on the air, but you told me you could double. How can you double? Can you double with two guys that are right there? Can you actually double from two different lines, two different depth levels? Is the double team back?
Well, the double team, the setup of the play is this. There's 9 players who have to be close to the coverage team, right? There's 7 guys have to be 5 yards apart, and you get 2 guys who can be a couple of more yards, but not still in front of the 30-yard line. There's also 2 guys back in what they're calling the landing zone. Okay, the landing zone's from the goal line to the 20-yard line.
Right.
Nobody from the landing zone can be a part of a double team in any way, shape, or form. Anybody from the setup zone, those guys that are close, can be a part of a double team. So they can be adjacent players. That can be 2 guys on 2 different levels. Those players can be involved in the double teams.
Can you attack? Can you attack block?
So that's one of the things that I think we will get more clarity during the preseason, because there is no restriction as far as a return player going across the 35-yard line to go block somebody. They're going to keep the head and neck shots out of it, but there was plays I showed in a meeting from before the rule changed in 2018, and they're plays that I've seen a bunch of, you were a part of, where when that ball was kicked, there was absolutely attack blocks, probably a kind way of saying it. Like, it was a dead sprint. Two guys are sprinting at each other, and there were some heavy collisions. Those types of plays is exactly what I'm referring to. Like, how aggressive can you go to block somebody? Because, you have different body types. And in my opinion, I think there's going to be the average kickoff guy is going to be a little bit heavier, right? Some bigger bodied guys, as opposed to some of the speed guys, because the speed part of it has been taken out with the space. So if I'm asking a lighter player, if I'm asking a 190-pound defensive back to block a 270-pound outside backer, it's probably not to his advantage to drop back, give this guy more momentum to run me over, right? Like, you're probably going to want to try to affect this player as soon as we can, but there's going to be a fine line with how aggressive that block can be.
Does it alter at all who you want returning the ball? I mean, there was talk even earlier in the offseason that the Steelers were, I don't know if it was serious, but they were throwing Justin Fields' name out there. I mean, that's not something you would ever hear under normal circumstances. Does it alter at all, like, what you look for in a returner?
I'm not sure yet. I think some of the guys who have been returners are still going to be good at this style of return. What I think the mindset can change a little bit is, like, this play is going to take less, unless it breaks. It's going to take a normal return, say to the 30-yard line, is going to take less time than the average offense and or defensive play.
Yeah.
So you're not talking about extensive running by the coverage team, and like the returners are going to be able to make an impact. Like, the average start point last year was the 24 and some change, like about the 25-yard line. Well, I'm anticipating this being closer to the 30. So, some of the more prominent players that people were thinking, boy, I'm not sure that we want to do that as fast as these guys are running. That's a good shot. They may get more involved. Now, what I would say is more returns, that return is going to take more hits.
Yeah.
So, like, the durability factor is something that I think we all have to take in consideration, and you also need 2 guys who can catch and return the ball. In the past, you felt like you could have a returner and another guy with some return skills but more a primary blocker. The kickers are going to be spraying the ball more so than they had in the past. So you're going to need 2 guys back there who can handle the ball, be effective returners. So the number of people that you're going to have to get prepared is going to grow. You're not going to have the same 2 guys back there in week 1, wire to wire to week 18. I just don't believe that. I think you're going to have several guys ready.
Yeah, the directional kick is going to come back, right? I mean, that's something that, okay, I don't want to get distracted. I don't want to get too down into the weeds.
Wolf would do
right
a 4-hour show with you right here.
We're ready.
Are you calling, like, all your other buds in the NFL and saying, what do you think about this? How much are you guys actually talking about just the rule?
Yeah,
Not personnel, but the rule.
So I guess the way I would say, and I've heard plenty of interviews from around the league, and I would echo what they've said. There's a ton of conversation in February. There's a bunch of conversations in March. this thing hits, those conversations kind of trail off, and it's been radio silent for about 6 weeks. And I think all of us are trying to figure it out, what the best way, and we're all thinking we have the best idea.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not sharing those ideas. As time goes on and now the tape is out there, now you're not protecting as many things, but there's still, a couple of guys that I feel like I have good enough relationships. We don't play those teams,
Right.
that you can perhaps bounce some ideas off of. But again, you're trying to stay ahead of it as much as you can.
Jeff, this is really interesting stuff when you consider how much it's going to impact a lot of games around the NFL this year. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
All right. That's Jeff Rodgers
Thanks,
joining
guys.
us right there.
Thanks for watching Wolf and Luke. Tap to see more and click the button in the middle to subscribe to Arizona Sports.